Welcome back to our Reddit Archive series, where we take a look at some of the strangest, dark, and sometimes even disturbing Reddit posts online. As always, a huge thank you goes out to our channel members who help support the content. You can also become a member by clicking the join button, or support the channel by simply subscribing and leaving a like. But enough of that. Now that that's out the way, let's dive in. Our first post comes from a user by the name OtherCantaloupe4765, who came onto the RBI subreddit on May 5th, 2025. Increased police presence in my town. Cops always telling me when I'm driving. What reason could there be for this? I'm not schizophrenic, and my carbon monoxide detector works fine. Thank you. Just thought I'd get that out the way, lol. I live in rural western Pennsylvania. Obviously, there are cops around here. We have the borough police and the state police barracks in town, so it's not unusual to see a cop car here and there. But over the past couple of weeks, I've noticed an increased police presence around town. I'll see 4 or 5 police cars just on my 10-minute drive to work. And there are just as many when I'm driving home from work late at night. The anxiety-inducing part is that they'll tell me all the way home. Once is a coincidence. Twice, alright. But it's happened 5 times already. And it's not like they're just driving around. The cop car will be sitting in a parking lot, headlights off, and then they'll suddenly flick their headlights on and pull out behind me. It makes me think that they're going to pull me over, but they haven't yet. They just follow me all the way to my apartment and then keep going past when I make the turn. It's happened twice in the daylight, so it's not just happening at night. I take a bunch of back roads instead of going the main road in order to avoid having to stop at a million stoplights. It's not like they're secret roads or anything, but they're not roads that people typically use unless they live back there. And the cops always follow me down that road. I mentioned it to a coworker of mine because I thought I was going crazy, but he told me he noticed the same thing. Cop cars everywhere, and he's been tailed a few times himself. I've considered a few possibilities. It was just college graduation weekend, so maybe they're out looking for DUIs. But it doesn't really explain why they'd tell me or others the entire way to their destination, rather than just observing for a few minutes to see if the person is swerving or disobeying traffic laws. Maybe they're out looking for someone who fits a certain description or has a certain type of car because a crime was committed. But there haven't been any reports of criminal activity where the perpetrator is on the run, nor is there any mention of an escapee from one of the hospitals around here. Maybe they've updated their quotas and are desperate to catch people for traffic violations. But typically, when cops are trying to meet their quotas, they'll sit just out of sight and catch people speeding as they go by, and they'll give citations for that. This seems like a lot of effort if they're just trying to make a quota. Hopefully I don't sound paranoid, lol. I just hate being tailed all the time. It just gives me so much anxiety because I'm constantly panicked about doing something wrong and ending up with a traffic ticket I can't afford. I wanted to see if others had any ideas about what's going on. I'm so annoyed that I now have to be on the edge of panic whenever I drive. My first thought after reading this was that maybe this person believes they are being gang stalked. For the unaware, gang stalking is when a person believes they're being stalked by not just one, but multiple different people. The person being stalked may even believe that an organization is purposely harassing, stalking, and even attempting to intimidate them on a daily basis. There's even an entire subreddit where people who believed they're being gang stalked share their experiences. More often than not, the person being stalked is experiencing extreme paranoia and other mental health issues which result in them believing that somebody, or everybody, is out to get them for some reason. But in the case of our OP, they seem to be implying that they're of sound mind, seeing as how they opened up the post with, "I'm not schizophrenic, and my carbon monoxide detector works fine." Still, I wouldn't say that this is enough to completely clear the OP, but they seem to have some level of awareness. Typically, I'd expect most of the comments to say something about the OP being crazy or needing help, but that did not appear to be the case. The top comment came from a Redditor named GothicLG, who said, "Not that this is what this is, but whenever I've seen a legitimate uptick in cops, a very big arrest usually happened eventually. Could be a meth lab. Could be some high-ranking gang member, could be anything. It was usually an, alright, let's make sure this sketch excuse for an area is going to let us get him. Our OP would reply back, that's worrisome. I'm not a drug lord and there aren't really gangs out here. I wish they'd spend their time on people who are really trafficking drugs. While I can see why the OP would believe that there are not gangs in their area, that doesn't necessarily mean that some organization or even just a small group of individuals are not trafficking or manufacturing drugs in their city. The police could potentially be conducting a large-scale investigation in the OP's area, like Gothic LG states, which would explain the increase in presence. Another commenter by the name Dead in the Head 9 would add this. To be honest, it's possible your car is similar to the one that belongs to someone they are interested in. I live in a small town, and for a while, everyone that drove the older model Subaru Outbacks got followed randomly by cops, and we think they wanted someone specific. I drive a much less distinctive car and never get followed. This could explain why the OP is being followed all the way home, but the OP stated that their coworker has also been followed home, which doesn't make sense, unless they drive similar looking vehicles, or they work somewhere like a bar where people often leave intoxicated. But none of this is made clear by the OP. However, after some time, the OP did come back with an edit to their post and gave us more information about what they look like and what kind of vehicle they drive. Edit. I'm going to add a couple of frequently asked questions that I've been seeing here. What color/nationality are you? I'm white and am from the USA. What car do you drive? I drive a black 2001 Lexus SUV. It looks its age. It's definitely not new and definitely doesn't stick out. Is the car in your name? Yes. The title, registration, and insurance policy are all in my name, and it was registered around this area. My information on those things is up to date. What's weird is that if the police are looking for somebody with a similar vehicle to the OP, then they would be able to see that the OP is the actual owner of the vehicle whenever they drive behind them. And furthermore, if what the OP says is true about the police waiting in the parking lots where they work, then when the OP gets off of work and gets into their car, they should know that the OP is not the individual that they're looking for, which does not explain why they have followed the OP all the way home on multiple occasions. Let's assume that the OP is the one that the police are targeting as part of some investigation. This could explain why the coworker was tailed due to their association with the OP, and why they followed the OP all the way home. But it seems to me that the police aren't even trying to be discreet, which is odd because you would assume that they would not want to tip the person off that they're investigating. Thankfully, we would get some answers around a month later, on June 3rd, 2025, when the OP gave the RBI a much-anticipated update. Hi. Some of you might remember the post I made about a month ago about how there were always cops following me home. It had gotten to the point where they'd follow me home at midnight multiple times each week, and then turn around in my driveway to go back the way they came. So it was very obvious that they were deliberately going out of their way to follow me home. A lot of people suggested that there was about to be a drug bust or arrest made against someone I'm close to, location-wise or relationship-wise. Yesterday, I walked out of my apartment as I was leaving for work, and I stepped out to see 3 armed probation officers in full bulletproof gear on my porch. They were pounding on my neighbor's door and demanding that she open the door and come out immediately. Of course, I froze for a second because I didn't exactly expect to run into armed police officers aggressively demanding entrance to my neighbor's apartment. It was pretty bizarre. Thinking about it now, it's a little funny because the officer banging on the door just did a 180 when he saw me. He went from, "Bang, bang, bang, open the door," to seeing me and smiling while saying, "Hey, how's it going?" I looked at him like, "What the f?" and said, "Oh, I'm fine, thanks." And I hopped in my car to go to work because I wasn't sticking around to be a part of whatever was about to happen. As I started driving on the road, I saw 2 police cars headed that way. I'm sorry I don't have any juicy details or a dramatic ending to the story, lol. I'm as curious as anyone else, but this is all I know. I'm assuming, like others suggested, that they were following me around specifically because I share a wall in the same apartment building with my neighbor. Maybe they thought I might have been involved in some way or something. I don't know. And I don't know if the cops will stop telling me now or if it'll continue. Hopefully it stops. It gives me a lot of anxiety around driving. I guess I'll find out soon enough. Thanks everyone for your help and suggestions. Unfortunately, the OP did not stick around to give the full scoop, but I think they did get their answers. It seems like some of the commenters on the original post may have been onto something. The police activity must have been the investigation, only it wasn't an investigation into the OP. It was actually an investigation into their neighbor. A commenter by the name Smeegs3 would say this: "My guess is that they ID'd you as a frequent visitor to her door, but didn't have eyes on the actual door and thought you could be a customer. They were probably trying to catch you leaving with drugs so they could flip you on her. Since you lived there, they never caught you leaving shortly after arriving." The OP would reply back, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Our building faces the forest, so the front of it isn't actually visible from the road or even as you're coming up the driveway beside it. They very well could have been thinking I was a repeat customer, or a romantic partner of this person or something. LOL. And now the pieces began to fall into place. Because the OP was neighbors with the person that the police were investigating, they were likely trying to measure out what kind of relationship, if any, the OP had with their neighbor. And depending on how the investigation went, they may have been even trying to catch the OP doing something illegal to help build their case against the neighbor. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like the OP even knew the neighbor that well, or what they were up to, so they probably won't be having to deal with any legal troubles down the road. But still, I can only imagine the anxiety that the OP must have experienced for the month that they spent being followed home. User ArtSpots would say this: "Well, damn. I was fully prepared to think that you were going to talk about a recent psychosis diagnosis, not that the cops were actually tracking your neighbor." The OP would reply, "Sorry to disappoint, LOL. If it makes you feel better, my mom's response when I texted her about all of this was, well, at least you know it's not in your head." Like, I already knew it wasn't in my head, Mom. It's so hard to talk about being followed by the police because that's the standard psychotic paranoia fantasy that comes out when someone is experiencing psychosis or is on drugs. People hear that and assume you're crazy, LOL. I'm glad I have tangible evidence that I'm not." And there you have it. It was not a case of gang stalking or carbon monoxide poisoning after all. The OP really was being followed, but it wasn't them that the police were after. Since this update, the OP has not posted anything relating to this experience anymore, so I think we can assume that the tailing home from work has stopped. But this does serve as a good example that you shouldn't just immediately jump to the conclusion that somebody is crazy or going through some mental health episode. Sometimes people really are going through something that they want real advice or help with. It just takes an open mind and a bit of digging to find out what's really going on. Our next post was posted by a user named the OB Robot, who came onto the RBI sub on April 25th, 2025, with their post titled, "How to Discreetly Verify If Someone is in the USAO." I'm posting this here because there isn't a sub for US attorneys. My local Pokemon Go group has quite a few interesting characters, from a US Navy ship captain to senior devs for major software companies. By far, the most unusual is one member who claims to be a relatively high-ranking member of the US Attorney's Office. He has significant legal knowledge regarding how legal proceedings work, and we're fairly certain that he at least has legal training. Since politics regularly come up these days during IRL group meetups, he has taken to using "I'm a USAA" as a trump card when people disagree with his interpretation of legal proceedings. His opinion on various legal-related news events often clashes with mainstream interpretations of those same events. And while I understand that media typically just has a surface-level understanding of what they cover, it has gotten to the point where myself and other members are a bit suspicious. To put it succinctly, we want to know if he's legit or full of it. We like to do so discreetly, as just calling him out on it and asking for ID would clearly be socially awkward. We've already tried a few avenues of research. Obviously, we Googled his name, not his username, but nothing was found. Not even a picture of him. The name we all know him by is a pseudonym, as according to him, he immigrated 40-ish years ago and his birth name is difficult for Westerners. We've also checked for the USAO position he claims to hold, but could not verify that way, nor could we verify that the position he claims to have exists. We've also tried Googling his number just for good measure, but got zilch. We can't even find a LinkedIn for him, and we couldn't find him listed in the California bar's list of attorneys. He claims to be becoming a judge at some point in the next 2 months. This feels like it would be easy to verify online, but we haven't been able to find anything. Part of the problem is that we don't know for sure what name he uses for work. The other problem is that we can't find a list of vacancies that includes current nominees. The current list of vacancies on the US court site has no nominees listed. Any help is appreciated. The only goal is to verify his claim that he's actually with the office. Since he claims to be at or near director level, I'm hoping for something like a public record of higher level attorneys within the organization, but really anything that verifies/disproves him would be fine. Even just smart questions to ask him that you'd pretty much need to be a USA to know. Please note, I'm not asking Reddit to find this person or dox them. I meet up with them at least once a week, often more. I've been to social events at their house. I'm just trying to verify that they're being truthful about their employment. Thanks in advance. We've all met somebody who claims to be an expert in some field and always uses that as background to win every argument on said field, which, depending on how they come about it, can be pretty annoying. In the OP's case, he and his buddies have gotten to the point where they have to confirm that this person really is who they say they are, even going as far as asking for the help of Reddit to verify these claims. Now, in order to become a lawyer, you have to pass the bar exam and be registered with the Bar Association. Sort of like how doctors need to prove themselves to the state medical board in order to get a license so that they can practice medicine. Lawyers do the same thing, but with the Bar Association. Once they pass the bar exam, they get registered, receive a bar number, and are then able to practice law. The name of a lawyer and their bar number are typically public information and can be looked up fairly easily. However, on a state-by-state basis, lawyers can sometimes practice under a fake or pen name as long as it is not done with the purpose of intentionally misleading anybody they are representing. Sort of like how Saul Goodman's real name was Jimmy McGill, which could explain why the OP is having a hard time finding any information. They did already say that their buddy uses a public name because his actual name is too hard to pronounce. So clearly, this person has no problem using another name, but a commenter by the name Mal Apple would say this: I work in the legal industry and have friends who are in the DOJ. I can't imagine a situation where you couldn't answer this if you can find out what his legal name is. I googled my AUSA friend and instantly saw a bunch of hits, from LinkedIn to the local bar with her info. It's very public. When you pass the bar, you typically must use your legal name. In my firm, you must use that name on your legal documents, including our website, your email signature, etc. So you'd see things like John Smith if they had a common nickname or transitioned or whatever. It's a requirement that can't be avoided, and is problematic in some cases. Finding their real name will probably solve this immediately. As an aside, over my career, I've worked with plenty of paralegals and others who talk like they are lawyers in most conversations. It's obnoxious. I've met several who were taking the bar soon, or constantly brought up how they were going to finish law school soon and get their JD. The OP would reply, Thanks. One of our theories is that he is indeed a paralegal, but his various statements and claimed position are those where his passing of law school and the bar are completely implied. For some context, a JD is the law degree that law students get before they get a master's in law. However, unlike the bar, information on who has a JD is not readily available as public record. What's odd is that despite the OP knowing this person personally, and even physically met them before, they're still not able to find a LinkedIn profile, an office number, or anything at all. Any successful lawyer would have to do some form of networking, and nowadays, You could say that if you don't have LinkedIn, you're not really in business. It just doesn't make sense that a lawyer in the US Attorney's Office has little to no information out there, even if they're just an assistant US attorney. One user named Diverse Alarums would suggest this. I'm no investigator, but just a quick thought. You say you've been to his house for social events. Have you checked property records? Even if he's not the owner, you may be able to check people online who are connected with the property owner and get a name that way. Just a thought. This could be a good method. A bit invasive, but the OP is trying to get to the bottom of this, so it could work. Another user named Paralethal would add this. Paralegal here. You can go on Pacer, create an account, and search by attorney name, and it will give you a list of the cases he's been involved with. But unfortunately, after a reply from Mother of Katsis on this comment, who said, "Have you figured anything out? I'm invested," the OP would come back with this. I didn't. While Pacer seems like a clear way to determine this, it appears to require payment info to sign up, to be used during case searches. That's more than I'm willing to give out, given that my objective is to call a gamer buddy out on his likely BS. Only 4 days after they first posted, the OP would come back with one update. Thanks to everyone who replied to my original post here. It got weirder, and now I need to know how to find out if he is a policy director at a PAC. For this request, I'll refer to him as Leland. To recap my last post, a prominent member of my Pokemon Go group has claimed for the last 2 years to be at a director level within the US Attorney's Office, and frequently uses that as a high ground during discussions of current events, which are common in our group, seeing as we chat a lot while catching/rating Pokemon. At least a few of us have expressed doubt, as various claims of his seemed totally unhinged. He also uses a first and last name socially, that he indicates is not his real name, due to his alleged real name being difficult for English speakers to pronounce. Myself and 2 trusted Pokemon Go players are now on the search for the truth about who he is and what he does. By looking up property records for a known address, I was able to confirm that Leland's social name is the one on property records. A background check on that address yielded other residents and known relatives, as well as their locations. One of those relatives has a Facebook account with many public pictures, including one of Leland's birthday cake, the age he turned on that birthday, and the Facebook standard date indicator. We'd thought he's 15 years older than he actually is. He's actually a very old passing millennial. The relative also uses Leland's social name in the post, which establishes fairly definitively that he does not actually have some indecipherable foreign real name. Oh, and he is for sure not a US attorney and has no records of cases, nor is he listed in records of people who passed the bar in our state. It seems as though the OP took the commenter's advice and actually got some good information out of it. They did manage to confirm that their friend was not an attorney, but things only got weirder. From that same Facebook picture, I found an account that reacted to it with a name nearly identical to Leland's, with a picture of Leland's pet as a profile pic, and no other public photos. What is public is his alleged job history. Starting around the time he would have graduated, he claims to be a vice chancellor at a major university, and a regent on the relevant board of education. Both of those are confirmably false, as people occupying those positions at the time are well documented online. However, one other job is listed, a policy director at a very controversial political action committee, representing a very controversial country. I will not name it here or in the comments, but chances are you've heard of it. The position allegedly started a few years after he would have graduated. Now, the initial thought is to assume it's BS, right? Well, he's made passing references to the PAC before. He speaks the language of the country it represents. Anytime it's come up, he seems to have knowledge of the country you'd expect from a PAC member, and the opinions too. Having known him for several years, it would honestly explain him completely if this were his real job. It also at least seems believable to all of us. With regards to the director role, it's also plausible that he's an assistant director, as he has used AD in conjunction with his name. The trouble is, we're having trouble verifying it. We've checked LinkedIn for his name, the PAC's website, and news reports about the PAC. We can't find any mention of him anywhere online. We can't find a list of employees for the PAC. He doesn't have any definitive web presence besides the Facebook account we found and a civil court case he was a defendant in. Given that Leland seems to keep his web presence locked down, and he has established himself as our Pokemon Go group's very own Anthony Santos, how would you verify he belongs to a specific pack? Side note, my last post had a few people asking why does it matter? And you know what? In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't. It's a Pokemon group. But with as many lies as we've already caught him in, it would bring us pleasure to finally and definitively call him out on the whole charade from start to finish. A PAC, or Political Action Committee, is basically an organization that gives money to politicians or political movements. They can be on either side of the political spectrum and can also come from foreign governments. I'm not going to try to speculate on which country the OP is alluding to, but they seem to believe that this might be the case, and since there is no list of people working in this PAC available publicly, it could explain why they can't find any information out on their friend. A user by the name Mysterious Cat Travel would say this: I'm not an expert, nor do I have inside information on PACs, but have you considered calling their office and just asking for him? Or utilizing any contact info they have on their website? You could pretend to be someone verifying employment or some other thinly veiled ruse. And OP, I totally understand wanting to uncover his lies, even though it doesn't matter even a little bit in the grand scheme of things. Don't we all go all in on stuff that doesn't matter at one point or another? Live your dreams, OP. But the OP would reply back, stating that they did not feel comfortable reaching out to the PAC out of fears that they may end up on some watch list. If the PAC really is as controversial as the OP believes, then maybe it's best not to mess with them. Unfortunately, this doesn't give us any answers as to what the OP's friend actually does, and the OP has not come out with any update that confirms anything. But we do know that this person is not a US attorney. User Silent Conflict 9420 would say this: he's probably lying about his name not being his name if you've caught him lying about other stuff. Some people just lie all the time. I once worked with a guy who lied about a bunch of mundane, stupid stuff, and we discovered this because his lies got crazier and easier to verify. Pay attention, and the guy will fuck up his stories. Look up his fake identity and see what you find. The OP replied, way ahead of you. We did verify that his social name that he says isn't his real name actually is a name he's used in court in a civil suit, and is also the name a confirmed close relative uses for him. And trust me, part 1 of our whole search was checking for socials under his name, and his in-game name found zilch apart from the Facebook mentioned in my post. But this is where our trail ends. Maybe this person is just a liar and has lied about everything. Or maybe they actually do work for a foreign country's political action committee and say they're a lawyer because it's easier to explain. Either way, this shows us that even if you've personally met somebody and been inside their home, you may not truly know who they really are. And sometimes, something as innocent as the game Pokemon Go can lead you down a rabbit hole, with no telling where you might end up. Our final post was uploaded on June 23rd, 2025, by a Redditor with the name Jupiter Daydreams. Boyfriend's best friend, missing for weeks, but the details don't make sense. What are we missing? This happened in Redding, California. Not sure if the story has spread to Southern California yet, but basically, as the subject says, my boyfriend's best friend has been missing since May 25th, and although I've been telling my boyfriend not to worry and that they'll find him soon, I'm starting to get a bit concerned. His best friend, 21, male, accidentally crashed his car into a fence on a ranch where he was working on the morning of the 29th. Apparently, he called and reported the crash to the police. I say apparently because when his roommate called my boyfriend to tell him the news about the crash, she didn't mention anything about reporting the crash himself, and then got a ride from a random woman back to his apartment. According to his roommates, he just got dropped off and left without going into his apartment, and they confirmed that they didn't see him enter at all through their Ring camera. However, another friend of his who lives close by went into the apartment and saw that he was there recently and had changed clothes. Specifically, he had left his old pants behind and, weirdly enough, had a pair of girls' earrings in one of his pockets. This is weird because he definitely did not have a girlfriend, and it didn't belong to anyone he knew, confirmed by his family and roommates. From there, the story gets a bit difficult to follow, as some articles and police statements came out that contradict what has been told to my boyfriend and I, but from what I can gather, the following happened after he left his apartment. He was picked up by a cab near a Wells Fargo that same day. The cab dropped him off at a trail that led to Avalanche Gulch in Mount Shasta. Apparently, he had backpacking gear with him and told the cab driver he was trying to beat someone's hike time. And it's been since then that there has been no report of him. My boyfriend is extremely worried, and obviously, so is his family, considering we're all the way down in Southern California. He's a great guy who doesn't drink or do drugs and really just focuses on himself and work. Now, I really don't think there was any foul play, and there is most likely a reasonable explanation for the events that led up to him going on the trail. But the beginning of the event makes no sense to me. Why would he report the accident and just run? Do the earrings have any significance? The weather has been decent near Mount Shasta, but he is not a very experienced hiker, and he is not super familiar with the trail area itself, and neither am I. What is the likelihood of navigation through that area with no experience? Personally, I think he does not want to be found by authorities, for reasons I do not wish to disclose, and is going to relocate to another state perhaps, so I wasn't scared at first. But as time goes on, I am starting to get a bit worried as he hasn't tried to make contact with my boyfriend or even his own family. Are there any other details that I am missing that could help piece together what happened? Is there anything else we can do or request from the authorities to help him? The story is pretty strange, like the OP said. This individual crashes his truck into a fence, reports the incident, but immediately flees the scene. Assuming the car is registered in his name, the police would easily know who crashed the car, not to mention the phone records of his call to 911. But this isn't what I find weird, because if they were intoxicated, then they obviously wouldn't have wanted to talk to the police and get questioned about this, which would potentially risk them going to jail. That much makes sense. What's weird is him going home to change and managing to avoid his roommates and the Ring camera, meaning that he either crawled under or around the camera's field of view or got into the apartment through a window or some other way. I can understand not wanting to deal with the police, but your roommates are another case. They're not going to arrest you, scold you, maybe, but why hide? And then there's the earrings, which the OP stated that the friend did not have a girlfriend and it seemingly wasn't from anyone his friends or family knew of. So now, there's another person involved. Later that same day, this person packs up a hiking bag, goes to the bank, and gets a cab ride up to Mount Shasta, despite not being very experienced as a hiker. Mount Shasta isn't a very difficult mountain to climb, but it is considered a, quote, beginner's big mountain. Definitely not something to take very lightly. The OP mentions that their friend is taking a hiking path up to a location on the mountain called Avalanche Gulch. Here we can see an image that shows the gulch and a route up there. Looking at the image, it does not seem like something you just decide to do out of the blue, especially right after you just crashed your vehicle with potential head injuries. And again, why feel the need to hide from everyone? One user by the name MME Genevieve would comment this in an effort to explain the strange behavior. Is it possible that he suffered an injury in the accident, like a concussion? This would account for the strange behavior. I'd check for John Does in local hospitals and shelters, which would make sense because the impact of the collision could have definitely given this person a concussion, but we have no way of knowing for sure without him being physically present to examine. Further down in the comments, a user by the name OKEquivalent8260 would post a link to the Web Sleuth's website, where individuals on there were already looking into the disappearance. They even provided a missing persons image, where we learned that his real name is Lesnar Cardenas. Back to the post, where the OP provided the first update. Edit. I didn't expect for this many people to actually look into this and help with finding possibilities for his whereabouts. So thank you to everyone making great points and suggestions. The police has searched the area where the cab dropped him off, but they haven't found him. I believe they were looking for him for a couple of days and then stopped, since there wasn't even a lead they could find. From what I know, he really had no serious mental health issues. He was dealing with some personal family issues that could have caused him to be sad or depressed, I guess. But whenever my boyfriend talked to him about it, he seemed to have a positive outlook on the situation and was hoping for the best. He really would never let anything negative get to him, and really was just a great guy who was just starting his career. We think he trashed his phone because they haven't seen any activity reported since he went missing. I do think he could have had a head injury, but how bad could it have been if he was able to go back home to prepare for a hike, go to the bank, which seems to me to be on purpose, and talk with a taxi driver? Regarding questions about his bank account activity and such, I'm really not sure. I would like my boyfriend to push and ask for more details, or for more to be done on the situation, but we don't even know if he can. He's not his family, but he has been a close friend of his for many years, and would have phone calls to catch up on life all the time. Is this enough for us to be able to speak to the authorities up there and see if they can do more or investigate anything else specific to the situation? Going deeper into the car accident leading up to Lesner's disappearance, an article on KRCR-TV informs us that Lesner had rolled his car over and even provided a picture of him taken by someone on the scene, allegedly right after the incident occurred, though his wrecked car is not in the shot. They also included a statement from the Reading Police Department in which they confirmed that Lesner was the person that called the incident in, but we still don't know why he went to Mount Shasta. The article states that the person that gave him a ride to his apartment after the incident said that Lesner was talking normally and did not appear to be that injured. But a rollover is no small incident, and if he did experience a head injury, it could be some time before any symptoms begin to show. In the time that Lesner made it back home and went to the bank, his mental state could have drastically changed. A user by the name Solid Gold Trash, who was very familiar with Mount Shasta, would also provide this information. Hey, I used to live in Shasta and have been to that trailhead, Bunny Flats, many times. It's halfway up the mountain, and is the trailhead for many hikes of all kinds of experience levels. This time of year, it's still covered in snow but melting, so many trails aren't open yet. To do many of the hikes starting at Bunny Flats, he needs snowshoes or skis. Avalanche Gulch is one way for very experienced mountain climbers to start hiking up to the summit. This would take special gear and experience, and would be strange for a solo climber to try without telling their loved ones. You can see that there were reports of avalanches from skiers and hikers in the time frame that your friend was driven up there on the Mount Shasta Avalanche and Climbing Information website. On the website, we can see that an avalanche occurred on June 1st, only 2 days after Lesner reportedly began his hike. If he had planned to stay out there for a few days, it's very possible that he could have gotten caught in an avalanche. But for now, back to the comment. 2 people checked in with photos on June 1st and reported on the conditions in the area. Possible leads for people who may have seen him: Eric Falconer, a snowboarder, and Hayden MacArthur, a climbing ranger. Edit. I also want to say, anecdotally, cell phone reception was always clear on the mountain near Bunny Flats. I'd sit in the parking lot there and download maps for my hike. I saw his cell phone lost reception around this time, and I wanted to bring this up because it points to him turning it off on purpose. The last part is what I find pretty disturbing. Obviously, Lesner could have had a different carrier than this commenter, but if he did have good cell phone service out there, then maybe he did turn his phone off. But again, why? At this point in the timeline, we still do not have any idea, but Lesner's story has begun to gain traction. A post from the r/Reading sub would link an article from the SFGate website where they revealed that Lesner left behind his wallet and ID, but took his passport with him. People have also begun to question how he managed to pay for the 2-hour cab ride that took him to Mount Shasta if he did not have his bank card on him. He could have paid cash, but this isn't mentioned in any article that I've seen thus far. Furthermore, according to the article, none of his friends had any connection to the mountain itself, so Lesner's comment about attempting to beat his friend's hiking record must have been a lie. The case only gets stranger the deeper you go. But we would get one more update on this post on June 24th. After reading a lot of people's responses, some of the events are starting to line up. I especially agree with something that a user brought up. Most likely, the reason Lesnar reported the incident himself was because it was on the road and he didn't want anyone to get hurt by him abandoning the car there, and he fled the scene due to not wanting to interact with authorities. Again, for reasons I feel are not my business to disclose. The earrings were most likely from that woman who picked them up. Why he would have them though, I'm not sure. I guess all we can do is wait. But these possibilities have put me at ease a bit, because it sounds like he was using rational thinking as he prepared to run away, getting backpacking gear and going to the bank, and was even able to report the incident himself. So based off of this, I'm leaning towards no major head injury, maybe a minor concussion. Another user also brought up some rural communities that are in those mountains. So again, if he's not already out of the state, I'm going to assume and hope he has found safety and possibly even a temporary home there, as that does sound like something he would do. My boyfriend and I live far away from Lesnar's family, but he's planning on going out to see them and check up on them. I'll see if we can push to request more information/details on the taxi driver and the woman who picked him up. Could it have been someone from the ranch? I'll have to have my boyfriend call and find out. I'll update if anything new develops. Currently, there are two major theories as to what could have possibly happened to Lesnar. One, being that he planned to run away, and did so, taking only his passport. And two, that following the car crash, Lesnar was experiencing a head injury, and as a result, decided that he was going to climb Mount Shasta, leading to him getting lost and potentially losing his life out there. As of now, there has been no recent news on his whereabouts, but his story is gaining more attention. And the more eyes we have on his story, the greater the odds at finding the answers for as to what exactly happened to Lesnar. Hopefully he is just lost and will be found soon, but sadly, as of right now, the only thing we can do is wait and share his story, hoping that others might see this and provide any information for where he could be. That's all for this video. Let me know what you think about these posts down in the comments. And if you want more casual content from me, consider checking out my second channel, Cold Coffin TV, where I talk about what's happening on the internet, whether that's streamers, YouTubers, or just internet drama in general. Well, that's enough self-promo. I will see you again in the next one. And of course, thanks for watching.